Don't say parkour. It's part 4, not parkour.
Welcome back to part 4 of our limited series podcast on gaining peace of mind when it comes to sales tax. We've got Paul with us again. Remember, he goes by Paulie and Pablo. And
you don't have to tell everybody my nicknames next time they call me.
You could be called something else. We'll see.
Paul is good.
Paul. He goes by Paul. But we want to talk about our 4th spoke. And this is probably one of the most scrutinized documents in audits. Can you guess what that might be?
Oh, yes. Exemption certificates, 100%.
Exemption certificates.
Final answer.
Probably the most scrutinized document in audits. Why is it the most scrutinized document in audits? Because the state is going to want to get its dollars on transactions where tax was not collected. And so a customer may indicate that they're exempt in some form or fashion. You don't want to just take their word for it. You actually want them to certify that they're exempt. The way they do that is they provide an exemption certificate. And exemptions and the certificates and the forms as a whole are different state by state by state, just like taxability and rates might be different.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we talk about certificates, when to accept those certificates, why you need to accept those certificates, and how to manage those certificates long term. I've talked about registrations, getting registered when I recognize that I have a responsibility to collect and remit tax on my sales. I've talked about voluntary disclosure agreements that can be entered into if I need to come forward anonymously and correct those situations. Now I'm registered, I'm compliant, I'm in mode and I'm collecting tax, and then a customer says, oh no, you don't collect tax from me, I'm exempt.
Yeah, don't worry about charging me tax. I'm exempt. Oh yeah, classic.
This can create some challenges, right?
Yeah.
And there's lots of types of exemptions. It might be the type of entity you are.
Yeah.
It might be what you're buying. It might be how you're using what you're buying.
Yeah.
You might be a reseller, a wholesaler.
Yeah.
You might be a manufacturer. You might be a contractor.
Distributor.
There's all sorts of different exemptions that might be available.
Loads.
Like taxability, like rates, those exemptions are deemed by the state, correct?
They're.
And they can be different across multiple states. And so you can have customers in multiple states who may be claiming an exemption. So how do you deal with that? What's the process if a customer indicates that they're exempt either on everything that you sell to them or on one thing that you sell to them?
Yeah, it's important to understand first what the state will accept in lieu of you charging that customer tax. You know, it could be a government agency that's just not subject to tax, right? And so there's not necessarily an exemption certificate, it's just they're a non-taxable government entity. I'm a manufacturer purchasing something that I'm using in the manufacturing process. I'm going to give you a manufacturing exemption certificate. That certificate will look different in Texas than it does in Louisiana. Yeah. I'll tell you that much. Or you just, to your point, you're a distributor, a wholesaler, and you're going to issue a resale certificate, which is a little bit different. So you got to understand first and foremost what the state will accept in lieu of the tax being charged to that customer. And then number 2, you got to make sure that the certificate that is presented is valid. Now, you're not required to be an auditor. You're not required to do your internal investigation of, hey, he provided me this manufacturing exemption. I don't know if he's manufacturing or not, but you are asked to use some common sense, and the states will ask you to accept the certificate in good faith. So you have that in your back pocket of, hey, he purchases this laptop or this desk or whatever it may be, and he told me he's reselling it. I don't have any reason to believe that he doesn't resell it, and so I accepted the certificate in good faith. The resale certificate, when you're accepting that certificate in good faith, you want to make certain that it's completed entirely. It has your name, the customer's name that you sold it to, their address, their account number, and most importantly, it's signed and dated. I can't tell you how many audits we've handled where the certificate is all completed minus the signature and the date. Well, it's invalid. It's like low-hanging fruit, easy pickings for an auditor who wants to, get his badge on the wall or get his name recognized of how much he found, because he can easily just disallow. Invalid or missing certificate is a very, very common under audit. reason why tax is imposed, you got to pay that tax out of your own pocket.
Yeah. So you spoke a couple of keys there to me. Key number one, if you're selling something that's taxable, collect the tax no matter what.
Yeah.
Even if your customer says they're exempt and
Yeah.
they shouldn't be charged tax, you need some sort of certification or a document, a certificate indicating that tax is not due. That's key number one.
Yeah.
Collect the tax. If you don't collect the tax, you need a certificate.
Yeah.
That's the way you prove to the state that a claim was made here and it's why I didn't charge the tax.
Yeah.
Number two, make sure it's the right form, the right certificate.
Yeah.
Number three, make sure that at minimum, it's completed fully,
Yeah.
right? You're not expected to verify the claim that they're making.
Right.
The state will come in and audit them and determine whether their claim is accurate or not. But the claim's completely invalid if the form's not complete,
Right.
right? So, because you like to say this, states like to make dollars, not cents. They don't always make sense. They want every dollar, right?
Yeah,
so in an
they
audit
do.
situation, one of the very first things they're going to look at on the sales side of an audit is they're going to determine whether you collected tax or not.
Yeah.
Every sale that you didn't collect tax, they're going to do two things. They're going to want to find out, was the item that was being sold taxable?
Yep.
And if it wasn't, okay, that's
okay.
a validated non-taxable
We're
sale.
okay.
If it was taxable, then they want to see a certificate that was collected in lieu of this tax that was not collected.
It's a very easy filter that they'll do on the spreadsheet, right? Of, hey, here's all your sales, no tax collected. They dump it back to you with some assessment of tax, and they say, hey, you owe this tax unless you can prove, because you're the registered taxpayer, you have the burden of proof. You got to prove that these weren't subject to tax.
And the only proof on a non-taxable sale for something that was taxable is a certificate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got
A fully completed certificate. So at audit time, these certificates are scrutinized more than at any other time, right?
Yeah.
Again, because they're trying to get their pound of flesh,
Yeah.
right? So I think we've talked enough about how important the certificate is and that it's fully completed and that it's taken in good faith. I mean, you could have a fully completed certificate from somebody who's making a claim that you just flat out know. they don't match the claim that they're making.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't accept that certificate and
Yeah.
charge them tax.
Yeah.
But how many exempt customers do I have? What if I have 100 exempt customers? Do I have to have 100 certificates?
Yeah, you got to have a certificate for every customer.
What if I have 100 customers a month that claim that they're exempt? I have to keep 100 certificates a month?
You do, unfortunately. And it may be that you're selling to that customer if that customer is just being sold to in one state. But if that customer, you're selling or shipping product to them in multiple states, then you may need to collect 6, 8, 40 certificates from them, depending on where the product is being delivered or the services are being performed more times than not.
So if I want a sturdy spoke when it comes to certificates, then I need to be audit ready. I may or may not be audited, and I may or may not need to provide these certificates.
It's true.
In a lot of audits, if there's a lot of transactions, they might do a certificate review on a sample
On a
basis,
sample basis, yeah.
right? And so if you're missing one certificate that falls into the sample of certificates that they're looking for, then that can have an effect on the whole population of certificates from an audit standpoint, right? It gets multiplied
It's really
in that situation. If it's a detail audit, they want to see every single one of them. If you don't have one or two, it's going to have an impact, and there might be an assessment, but it doesn't have the same impact that a random sample might have when you're missing that, and then it's multiplied times the number of transactions. So let's just talk a minute about what's the best solution to managing certificates. If you're managing 10 certificates or 100 certificates a year, you probably can keep them in a 3-ring binder.
Yeah.
Maybe even keep them on an Excel document so that you could.
Well, I'm not one to keep paper documents, so I'm getting rid of that 3-ring
No
binder.
paper?
No paper.
I guess I'm a little older than you are. Yeah.
My preference is to keep them digitally stored in the cloud somewhere where they can be backed up. In the event of a fire, you don't want to be losing those things.
Good
or
point.
A natural disaster.
Good point.
I mean, it's a good argument under audit of why you don't have the certificate. Hey, Hurricane Katrina came through.
So this is a good question. Digital images of the certificates are okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Digital images are good.
Okay, so I agree with you. Let's keep them on digital imaging.
Easy to access, but you got to verify them for sure. And so if you have a couple, 10 or a dozen or 40, and you can manage them on a Excel spreadsheet or a Word doc or whatever you want to, however you want to manage them internally. That's obviously the most cost-effective solution. And then when you get into the hundreds to thousands and they get really complicated and messy, then maybe you want to invest in some software.
Gotcha.
And the software in today's world, they'll do some validation of those certificates for you. They'll also track when they expire, because some certificates are only good for 12 months or they're only good for that calendar year. Other certificates, they don't expire. In those instances, generally I like to tell clients to get a new certificate every year. If you're not going to get a new certificate every year, then you ought to do it every 3 years or every 4 years.
Gotcha.
Because the statute of limitations, it will expire, but the certificate may not expire.
Gotcha.
So just good practice overall. And it really just comes down to the business and how they're managing those and the staff or the personnel that's doing that. Sometimes it can get really messy and complicated trying to get those certificates renewed from customers. And so employing a partner like the sales tax people or getting a software to help with that automation, they're very, very smart.
There are some good solutions out there, certificate management solutions, that are not so costly that, you can't adopt them or utilize them, especially if we're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of certificates that you're having to keep on hand.
I mean, it can be costly if you only have, 100 or a couple hundred because they're going to want to charge you a minimum. And that's why people generally are just like, I don't want to pay for the software. I can just manage it internally myself. I can keep track of the due dates. I can keep track of who I'm reaching out to, what the customer's name is, who the rep over there, or the account personnel is that I'm going to reach out to. And so it becomes pretty simple for the regular person to manage internally.
Yeah. Speaking of the last 3 spokes, there are some good automated solutions out there when it comes to taxability, when it comes to charging the appropriate rate, and when it comes to managing your certificates. I just want to highlight that. We really believe automation provides some incredible efficiencies.
Big time.
When it comes to your wheel gaining peace of mind. The one thing we would caution you on is automated solutions are not a set it and forget it type scenario, right? We say if you set it and forget it, you might regret it,
100%.
right? Because of the different changes and challenges that come up. So automated solutions are phenomenal, and we would love to make some recommendations on some great solutions when it comes to real-time taxability rates and then also certificate management. But it needs to be overseen, managed, and reviewed on a consistent basis to ensure overall compliance. And we'll talk more about that, I think, as we talk more about spokes. So again, Paul, thank you for talking a little bit about certificate management and the 4th spoke in our wheel, helping that wheel become a little more sturdy.
That's right.
And I look forward to talking more about how we can have the sturdiest wheel possible when it comes to sales tax.
Thank you for having me. As a reminder, just because the customer says they're exempt, don't just not tax them. Get the certificate. It's
100%.
important.
100% important.